Okay, is my screen now visible?
Yes, doctor, it is visible on my side.
Okay. Okay, today we want to start with strategic planning and then move on to ICT strategic planning. So our general objectives is that we want to see that you understand the role of planning in business. We've already seen a little bit of planning in yesterday's lecture. We want to define strategic planning, want to understand the benefits of strategic planning, and then at least be able to list or describe the steps of effective strategic planning. Just as we saw the different steps to benchmarking, we also want to do the same. And then be able to perform a SWOT analysis for your organization. So the first things first, let's first talk about what do you think planning is in your own thinking. What do you think planning is? Yes, Julian.
In simple terms, planning is setting out something to do and have actions on how to do whatever it is that you set out to do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to make it as basic. Otherwise, you don't want to use our usual definition, setting goals and then having actions on how to deliver those goals.
Yes. Basically, I think it's just setting out a roadmap about what it is we want to do. So I think just in the simple terms you've given us are quite sufficient, though the academics want to be as precise as possible. So as they said, the definitions, there are many definitions, but it is defining or preparing an action of steps that you want to achieve. You want to achieve certain specific goals. Yeah, so it is setting out a map, a roadmap, saying this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to move in this direction. Now, if it's done properly, you should see progress. What we want to see is progress. We want your business to achieve a certain goal. Remember yesterday when we were talking about benchmarking, the whole purpose of benchmarking is to see an improvement in performance. So the whole point of the plan is essentially to see some kind of progress that you've moved towards towards a specific goal. So that's in simple terms, that's what planning is. Now, why do we need a plan in business? Why do we need a plan in business? Well, first of all, any business must grow. They must, and that's what goals are all about, to grow. For those who have children, once you give birth to a child, there are milestones that you hit. The minute a child is born, or now at this stage the child can see. Now at this stage the child can turn their head. At this stage the child can, you can sit. At this stage the child will start crawling, then walking. All those are milestones. They are goals that you expect the child to proceed. The minute you don't see a child do that, then you see the parents getting jittery and they are worried. So also it's a business. A business must be in a constant state of growth. It can't be stagnant. It should be growing. So that is why planning is fundamental. Yeah, it must be achieving certain identified goals. That's why it is important to plan. So what is organizational planning? Yeah, so it is identifying the organizational goals and objectives, formulating and monitoring specific strategies to achieve those set goals. Yeah, so the planning process will involve two things: staffing, so you must have the right staff, and resource allocation. So you must have the resources and then allocate them to a certain, you allocate them for that specific purpose. So what does it involve? So if we start on this, you'll already see the process of strategic planning. You see, the staffing must start by beginning to analyze the organization's environment, looking internally. Yeah, looking internally at yourselves. Who are we? What do we have? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? Then forecast internal and external developments. Where do we need to go? And what is happening in the external environment? What are the new things that are happening? Where is the market moving towards? Yeah. Then evaluate accomplishments and resources. Now, with these three, you develop team building, modeling. You develop a team, you begin to model to see these things we're talking about, to have real conceptual ideas of who we are, what is existing internally within us, what is happening outside, and then you build a consensus. Once you've done that, this then leads to establishing a vision and mission statements, and developing your goals and objectives. These then translate into strategic policies and tactics. These strategic policies and tactics articulate the organization's plan. Then from that, you develop implementation methods and controls. This is then evaluated later on, periodically. Now, all of this is done within it has a time frame. Normally, this takes to be between 3 to 5 years. Yeah, this whole planning process takes between 3 to 5 years. But periodically, your different set of strategic goals, you keep evaluating them to see how much progress have we made. On this slide, we have two scenarios. And you can think about, we can just have just a quick discussion. Just a quick discussion. Scenario one, you're the manager of a small furniture company. You have 2 stores situated around the outskirts of Kampala. The company has been established for about 5 years. You have 12 people working for you in the departments of sales, finance, purchasing, and operations. Your store has regular customers who visit because of your high standards and personable staff. You are aware that you're a small company, but you have aspirations to expand further around central Kampala. Yeah? That's scenario one. If now we're looking now at the non-ICT side, the person you want to grow within central Kampala, this is who you are. What would be some of your business goals, achievable business goals, to see that you expand to central Kampala? Remember, it's a furniture company. You already have 2 stores. You have high standards, so your current clientele are there with you because of your high standards. You have a small staff, and your staff at the moment also are very much part of your strength. And not just your high standards of service, but your staff is also part of your strength. And right, the small nature of your business probably is also part of your strength because it gives you the high standards you want. So now you want to expand to Central Kampala. What would be some of your strategic objectives? Yes, Julian.
I think one of the strategic objectives, at least clearly mentioned there, is setting up another store in Central Kampala.
Yes.
And then 2, maintain quality of the furniture. 3 is to expand the workforce. It goes without saying, if you're expanding, you obviously have to expand the resources. So those are my 3.
Yeah.
I would think.
Anyone else? Could you like to add? Thank you, Julian. Yes, for sure. Having setting up the office, getting a physical. I think the first strategic objective would be getting a physical location in Central Kampala. That is true. Jude, do you have a contribution? Any other contribution? I would put, yes, definitely getting a central location, getting more staff, but I would also put training of the staff, having the other staff members trained. I would need to have a training. It has to be one of my strategic objectives. Periodic training to ensure that the new staff that you get are also inculturated into the current culture of your organization. That even those who move to the central office or whoever is retained decide that the same quality of service that one experiences in your old offices is also found in your new offices. Then I would ask, how do I maintain the same quality, standards of quality? If I have a furniture company in one place, these 2 places have really good quality. How do I ensure? Would it be just enough to say maintain high quality of furniture production? Is it enough? Wouldn't I need to have a very specific strategic objective that ensures that I maintain? You can think about it, but I would need to formulate a very specific strategic objective. For example, when I say train all new staff, periodic training for all new staff, that means that I want to ensure that the same quality of service that we find in the other 2 offices is also found in the other offices. So I would also need a very specific strategic objective that actually states how the quality of services, the product that I produce is the same. Either I say centralized production of furniture, whether the furniture is going to be in the central Kampala or in the outskirts, I would say have centralized production of furniture so that quality of service, wherever the furniture is being supplied, it's the same. Something like that, I would propose, something like that. Okay, can we look at scenario 2? This time, let's have a little bit more participation. So you're the MD of a construction company, which is on a global scale. Now, this furniture company wants to venture into education for the first time, meaning you want to be constructing 3 private schools in Abu Dhabi. Each school will be an international school following the British curriculum and has the capacity to host over 1,000 students in both primary and secondary education. As well as building the schools, your company will act as owners and governors of each school. You are aware of the stiff competition in education and want to ensure you offer a competitive edge through the standards you will bring. So you're a construction company. Now you want to venture into education. Now, in terms of education, you want to build the schools and then own them. Build the schools and then you own them. So you already have the strength that you are on a global scale. So the global scale part means that you're already quite vast in the cultures, in the global cultures. So building an international school means that as an organization, you already have already knowledge of the different cultures. This would be very different, let's say, for a Ugandan company to say, I'm going to Abu Dhabi now to build 3 international schools, yet the company is only versed with the Ugandan culture. So being an international school, you should have an idea of the international cultures. But however, you are not vast, your strength is not in education. Yeah. So as much as you may have very good structures, the company is not primarily vast in education. And education is quite different. It's quite different. It's actually a service, just like healthcare. You don't think about your primary objective is not profit. Whereas now you're coming from a completely profit-oriented business, you're going into a service-oriented business. So you want to own the school. You want to act as owners and governors of each of the 3 schools. So there's already a stiff competition in Abu Dhabi. So as we know, these United Arab Emirates areas are quite international in nature. So there's already, I'm sure, quite high standards already that exists. So you want to offer a competitive edge to the standards you will bring. Any ideas? Some strategic objectives you would propose, non-ICT related?
Doctor, I would, one is, of course, very clear. The strategic objective is to build 3 private schools. 2, introduce international curriculum in the 3 schools. 3,
Sorry, Gillian.
I think, yeah.
Sorry, Gillian.
Those 2. Sorry?
Could you just repeat them again?
Yes, no, I said 1 is to build 3 private schools. As 1, 2 is to introduce or set up an international curriculum in these schools.
Yes.
I was still thinking about the 3rd one.
Okay. Someone here has proposed that I would look at partnership with schools in Britain. Yeah. Milton, you also have a contribution?
Yeah, Doctor, I'm also trying to look at, because one, according to our scenario, this is a construction company that has little experience in education. And now even the institutions that this company is going to build, they are new, and they might be known in Abu Dhabi. So I think we must think about the issues of marketing, something like to market those institutions that they are known. So that's what I was trying to look at.
Sorry, sir, could you repeat that again, just a slide?
Doctor, I was saying that the institutions that this company are going to build are not known. They are new. They are going to be new. So we need to make them known to the masses around Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
Because even if they are good institutions, but if they are not known, you will not get the numbers you want.
Yeah, so aggressive marketing.
Yes.
Yes, aggressive marketing. Thank you. So Justin says I would start with benchmarking. Yes, that is a good one. I would start with benchmarking. That one I think is a good one. And then also this one that is proposed, identify professionals with the guide of British schools. Then also looking at partnerships. So I think those two would also help a lot. The aggressive marketing, partnering with a school in Britain, because I think because you want to come in aggressively and because you're unknown, apart from just the aggressive marketing, it's also good to partner with someone with already some known schools. For example, there are some British schools that are quite well known, where like the Royals go, like Eton or something like that. Or St. Andrews University, those really famous schools, or Oxford University, that kind of thing, York University, those really prestigious schools, partnering with them, and then your name comes in as part and parcel. I think those are some really good strategic objectives. Yes, so those that Julian mentioned are quite direct. Yeah, construction, that is one. Maybe you'd also put forward that high standard quality construction. Maybe since we're in the construction business, I would even go further and say, and have a strategic objective to construct maybe according to the latest trends, like for example, environmentally friendly construction buildings, because those are the latest things that we have now. To give that attraction, that competitive edge. Now you see a lot of young people are very much into the environment. So these young people can actually of the international caliber can actually even be attracted if let's say you have construction that is that has an environmental sensitive perspective to it, something like that. I wouldn't just deal with just construction, but I would go further. Yeah, so those are some of the ideas that I would be thinking about. Yeah, but that's what basically strategic goals are meant to do, to see how you are going to separate yourself from the herd, how you're going to stand out and be noticed. There are some, of course, strategic objectives come depending on the current condition that you are experiencing. Now, this scenario that we are seeing, scenario 2, is a newcomer, new entrant into the business sense, into the particular sector. The second scenario, the first scenario is an existing business which is doing okay, but wants to expand in the same kind of environment. The environment it's a local environment. So you see that one is different. You can also develop a strategy. You can also develop a strategy when you're struggling. Yeah, when you are going through, when a business is going through a certain kind of some kind of business struggle that it's experiencing. So in that case, your strategic objectives will be quite different from what we are seeing here. So we shall, as you do this in your different organizations, you will find that depending on what the organization is going through at that particular moment, you'll develop strategic objectives based on what it is you are experiencing. So you will notice what we talked about yesterday when we talked about benchmarking, when we say creative adoption. You'll find that you as a business, you're going, the situation you're going through at a particular time will drive you towards the strategic objectives that you formulate. Yeah. So I hope we've picked something from this small discussion. I'm going to take it silence means consent. Okay, let's move on. Some planning fundamentals. What are the 3 major types of planning that we find in an organization? So these are quite simple. We have strategic planning, tactical planning, and operational planning. So our focus is going to be on strategic planning, which is creation of strategies. Yeah. Now, when we look at this in detail, the strategies, which is something we've done already in the 2 scenarios we had above, we're looking at the big picture of what your organization is doing and where it wants to go. You're looking at the future and how do we get there. One of the key things that we are involved in when we talk about the future is developing a mission and vision statement. Now, every organization has one. If I asked each one of you, what is your organization's mission and vision statement? The organization should have one. It should have one because it speaks of the future, where it is you want to go. Yeah? Where it is you wish to go. Then your strategic objectives are basically how you want to get there. Yeah? How you want to get there. Now, this strategic objectives determines what is going to happen in the next years or more. So like I've been saying periodically, strategic objectives have a time span between 3 to 5 years normally. So the second type, tactical planning, will support the strategic plan. So this one translates into specific plans for a specific area of the organization. So you may have a tactical plan maybe for finance, for sales, or something like that. But of course, our focus is on strategic planning. So the tactical planning is really for the lower level departments to fulfill their parts in the strategic plan. However, I want to state this, that each department can have its own strategic plan, which makes up the entire organizational strategic plan. So for example, the sales department will have its strategic plan to ensure that the overall organizational goals are met. The ICT department will have its own strategic plan to ensure the overall organizational plans are made. So each department should have. Now, I'll give you the example. I remember when we were selecting the consultant who was going to speak to us from NSSF, that this gentleman reached a point where he told each department, now each ICT, how are you going to help NSSF achieve ABCD? Sales and marketing, how you are going to help NSSF receive ABCD? So that is what it means, where each department sets up its own strategic plan to ensure the overall strategic plan of the organization is met. Then the third planning is operational. So here we are looking at developing procedures and processes. Now, normally, now let me state this, the tactical planning, let me be more specific. The tactical planning can actually be done in terms of activities. Yeah, activities where you state, this is our strategic objectives. Now, we're going to do ABCD to ensure this strategic objective is met. Now, when we develop procedures and processes, this accompanies a strategic plan. So you'll find a strategic plan of a particular department you have the strategic objectives, the strategic activities, and then you also include procedures and processes. What it is you're going to do daily or weekly. For ICT, we also include standards. Yeah. So the procedures and processes normally come together with the policy as you develop your policy, because the policy actually operationalizes the strategy. But this is the second part of our course. We are doing strategy first, then we shall do policy planning. So the operational part, this is when we develop our procedures and processes. Any questions so far? No? Okay, let's move on. So why is strategic planning important? Why is it important? One, we articulate the goals we want to achieve. Yeah? Then we describe the specific action steps, the activities that we are going to carry out to ensure we get those specific goals. Then 3, we carry out reviews. Periodically, we carry out reviews to see how far have we reached. So really, this is performance oriented. We want to see that we are achieving performance. Now, on this slide, we want to make a difference between strategic planning and long-range planning. So in strategic planning, the external environment plays a big role. We have to examine the external environment. We have to constantly review the external environment, what is happening outward there, because it affects our clients. The external environment affects our clients. For example, if UMU doesn't constantly scan the external environment, the students we are all struggling for, that UMU is struggling to get, other universities are also struggling to get them. You also have new entrants that are coming in. Now we have even universities in Europe that are offering next to nothing school fees, tuition fees for students, next to nothing, foreign students. Now, UMU must survive in that environment. Now, in long-range planning, we are inward looking. What we want, where we want to be. Yeah? Strategic planning requires internal and external stakeholders. The internal and external stakeholders' input is extremely important, whereas long-range planning depends on the budget. It's budget-driven. In strategic planning, we want to see change. Change being adopted. Whereas on the other side, we want to have minimum involvement from stakeholders. In strategic planning, we have a vision somewhere we want to go. In long-range planning, we want to maintain a status quo. So this is the difference between the two. Strategic planning looks at change. There must be a change that is happening within the organization, or growth, in other words. Now, there are several models that exist in strategic planning. We have those that are goal-based. Yeah, goal-based. We want to achieve a certain goal. Then there are those which are issue-based. the organization is facing some kind of issue. And it wants to overcome that issue. That's why I was saying every organization will have different strategic formulations depending on what they are going through at a particular time. Then there are those which are organic, which are primarily on vision and values. When we want to maintain our identity. For example, UMU wanting to maintain the identity of being a Catholic institution, or IUIU. There are those which are scenario-based, where you divide the organization into teams and then you look at internally within the different departments, finance, sales and marketing, operations. So these scenarios are created by different teams, and then they begin to formulate the strategy based on that. Do you have any questions so far? None? Okay, let's move on. So these are just some of the steps. We're going to go through them in detail that we go through in strategic planning. So let's just go through each one of them step by step. Situation assessment and analysis. So here, this is understanding ourselves. Understanding ourselves. Remember the story of yesterday, we talked about the story of the tax collector, the Republican, and the religious leader told by the parable told by Jesus, where there was the religious leader who was looking at the other person and comparing himself and saying, I'm doing very well. And then there was the Republican who looked at God and looked at himself and realized, no, I'm not okay. So this is what situation analysis is. You ask yourself, who am I? What makes me unique? So it's not just about saying what's wrong with me, but what is it that makes me unique? What is it that makes me unique as an organization? What are my competencies? Then you look at your marketing. You value yourself in the market. You value your product. You value your price, your place, and promotion. How do we promote ourselves? How do I promote myself? Especially in terms of my unique identity. You look at your product or service life cycle. You look at your client, your customers, what do they think about you? What is their perception of you? So in this time, you can have focus group discussions. You can have surveys. You look at methods. It's almost like a research process, where you collect data from especially your external clients. What do they value? How do they think we are doing? Even also within the organization itself, you get the perspectives of your employees. So this is the situational analysis. When you look at yourself, then you have the external competitive analysis when you scan the in external environment. Yeah. Now the benchmarking is part and parcel of scanning the external environment to see how others are performing. So again, you also you have data collection methods. So these are some of the questions you may ask. Who else is providing the service? Are we spreading ourselves too thin? How is our product performing in the market? What is our service and product consistent with our mission and vision statements? So this is scanning the external environment. How are we doing? Identifying your strategic or critical issues. So here you look at what are your problems, what are your opportunities. What are the problems, what are the opportunities? Those things that can have a huge impact on your organization. What is it that we can't ignore? What is it that we can't ignore? Basing on the two analysis, the situation analysis internally and the external environment, you go through a brainstorming session, then prioritize, then list them. Yeah. Then you can even have a vote to see what should we deal with first. What should we deal with first? So here you're ranking and prioritizing on which things should we deal first, that should our strategic objective deal with first. Perform a SWOT analysis. Yeah. So here we already know what SWOT is. Then we have, we identify our opportunities and threats. Then we look at also our possibilities and obstacles. So the possibilities are those opportunities that may influence over time. Those things that may influence either positively or negatively. Then the obstacles are those things that can be a threat. Those things that we need to ensure we take out of our way over time. Maybe these are overhead costs, the qualifications of our staff, a new entrant into the market, a supplier, some particular input that may be of a particular threat. Now, for example, for us who are in tea, one of the things that is key is firewood. Tea factories need firewood. But we know now one of the big issues that is disturbing the whole world is the environment. So if you're in constant need of firewood, the tea factory needs firewood the way a construction site needs cement. It goes, it's in constant need. So that is definitely an obstacle. You need the firewood because you need something to heat, to produce heat. And that's the most affordable at the moment, but that is also an obstacle. So the next step is designing your strategic plan. So the other stages that we've gone through should have provided for you the following answers. Where do we compete? Understanding your market. What is your unique value that you bring to the market? Then the resources that you have at your fingertips. Then how do you sustain your unique value? These could be additional questions. You can go through them in your own time, in addition to the 4 that we have identified above. But you can go through them, especially if you've gone to Moodle, you'll have seen the assignment that I've put up. You can also look at that. So the whole point of a strategic plan is to survive and thrive. It's not just to say, let me just hit the mark, but grow beyond. That's what we want to see. Now, writing up your strategic plan. Now, the strategic plan you'd have agreed as a team, the entire management team, guided by the board members. I remember for us when we had our retreat, the board members agreed on what is the overall theme. What was the overall theme? And then 2, we gave the 4 main strategic objectives of the entire organization. Now, the entire management team went back and agreed then on all the strengths and weaknesses for each department. They agreed on the strategic objectives. Then we as board members later on came in to bring in correction, especially on our areas of expertise. So for me, I gave in my area of expertise as an ICT professional. So I gave it to the department. I gave that direction to that particular department. But now, again, the one or two people who were the writers, they came in to write because they had sat down with one consistent voice. The entire management team agreed. Then the different department heads went ahead to write. Then after that, they circulated the draft amongst themselves, then to the board members. Yeah. Where we reviewed and we commented. Like for me, again, I state as an ICT profession, I reviewed and commented on the ICT strategy and policy. So in each case, we had a firm deadline which we gave. We gave a deadline. We told management team we expect feedback by such and such a date. And they gave it back to us as now board members. Then we represent the other farmers, the other shareholders. So this ICT, this strategy will then be communicated to all the farmers and all the shareholders. Any questions so far? No? Let's move on then.
Doctor,
yes, please.
Yes, please. We see a lot of firms or companies or organizations getting external people to write. I don't know from your experience what would be the best, because as you mentioned there, you get one person to write this strategic plan. Is it usually better to get people out, or internal even resources, or people can actually do right?
Now, I think one, it depends on the resources you have available to you. But one of the things I see with an external person writing it for you, unless that person, the consultants have been part and parcel, how should I put it? The basic, the ideas, the strategic ideas, the strategic objectives must have been formulated by top management, by the entire organization. If you're getting somebody else to write for you, this person must be writing your thoughts, your ideas. That's what I would say. Because at the end of the day, the strategic plan is a living, working document. It must be put into action. Because as you see, the next step after writing is implementation. Now, the consultant is not going to be the one to implement. It has to be the organization itself. Yeah. So those who are writing, whoever is writing must be writing down what the members of the organization have agreed upon. This is what we want, and this is what we want to do. So if the organization has the resources to get a consultant, well and good, but the consultant must be writing down what you have agreed as a team that you want to do. Julian, I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, doctor.
Okay. So in implementation, we start with communicating the strategic plan to everyone. So it's agreed upon, this is what we want to do. Now, you also want to influence achievement. We want quick wins. So you communicate one to start effecting change. In other cases, we shall also see rewards, where we offer rewards for those who are making changes. Now, the priority areas must be kept up front. One of the things one of the ways that I remember at UMU, when I was heading the ICT department, and also in the faculty when I was associate dean, one of the ways that kept priorities up front was when we're doing activities like budgeting, the strategic objectives were up front. Then there was always a sense, you must maintain a sense of high urgency, especially for your priority areas where you constantly are talking. The management team is always talking about them, pushing it down to the lower level management teams. You must show enthusiasm for the plan. Sell the benefits, especially in the communication. Maintain a two-way information exchange where those who are implementing must be giving feedback all the time about how things are going, the challenges that are being met. How can we overcome those challenges? Rewarding where accomplishment is done. Where there is failure, own up to it, then focus on the lessons that you need to learn, especially where obstacles have been met. When do we find implementation failure? When there's lack of participation. And that lack of participation normally happens because of lack of communication. Not thoroughly thinking out your strategic plan. When you have people who are not taking responsibility, people who are not accountable. I remember Julian gave the example, you write down these reports, nothing happens. When someone is not interested or doesn't care about performance. Yeah? When you pick the wrong people for the tasks, and I think Julian gave us some good examples yesterday. Here are just some references you can go to read further on strategic planning. We have any question so far? Do we have any question on strategic planning? Okay, no, if not, let's move to our next topic, which is ICT strategic planning. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, Doctor.
Okay, so let's look at ICT strategic planning. So here we expect the student to differentiate between an ICT strategy from other organizational strategies. You should be able to discuss the benefits of ICT strategic planning, because this is something essentially you shall be doing. Now, the role of the CIO, that is the Chief Information Officer. Now, organizations have different titles. You have head ICT, you have ICT directors, all of these are different roles. But the specific, this is who you're training to be now. Yeah. This is the person now who sits at the management table. So this role is key. We want to look at the classic approach to ICT strategy development. Again, this is a classic approach. There are different methods. You can go ahead and look for these methods. But yeah, this is, well, we shall introduce you to the classic approach. We shall also look at the key elements of ICT, of an ICT strategy. Then implementation of the ICT strategy. We want to look at the steps we take. Then the factors that influence an ICT strategy. Then develop an ICT strategy for an organization. So these are some of the general objectives we want. So first things first, what is an ICT strategy? Just like the overall organizational strategy, it's something actionable. These are actionable interventions. We want to see an improvement on ICT use within an organization. So these are actionable interventions. We want to see that IT can deliver value towards the overall strategic objectives of an organization. Another key point, in a cost-effective manner. Why do we add cost-effective manner? Because ICT is very expensive. We all know this. ICT can be very, very expensive. As much as we all want it, we want to do it in a cost-effective manner. You know, I remember when I was head ICT, we used to go for yearly workshops with Reno. Reno is the provider, internet provider for universities and all research institutions. Universities are basically research institutions. So Reno is the internet provider for all research institutions. So I remember there was one particular guy. He was the head ICT for, I think, one of these donor-funded research institutions, you know, US funded. And this guy was basically he lived in a different world. And every time he got up to speak, I remember I was sitting with the former head ICT of UMU, who is now working with infectious diseases. Every time this guy spoke, would turn to each other and just laugh. This guy spoke a language different from the rest of us. I mean, he would tell us how he bought a server worth $4 million US. Now you're talking to heads of ICT in universities where the most expensive server you may purchase, may be, I don't know, maybe 1 million or 3 million Uganda shillings. That's the most expensive. And even then, you've really, really pulled the teeth of management just to release that money and give it to you. It's one of the biggest struggles. And this guy is talking about $4 million US as if it's pocket change. So the cost-effective manner is one of the key points that you need to think about, because ICT is very expensive. And one of the things, I'm sure all of you that are in ICT know, how for management, this is not a priority. ICT is never a priority. So you want to be as cost-effective as possible. Yeah. The ICT strategic plan is basically a guiding blueprint for the IT and the senior management regarding deployment of technology decisions. So it's already setting out for a period of, let's say, 5 years, to say, these are the decisions we need to make within this time. Then it highlights the relationship between technology choice and business choice. So we are not just buying technology for its sake, but there must be a clear relationship between the technology choices we make and the business choices that we are making. Why are we buying this server? How is it going to contribute to these business choices that we are currently making? Now, the ICT strategic plan is a living document. Yeah, I made this comment earlier. It's a living document. So it is something that is actionable. We are doing this right now, and it must be updated and reviewed on a regular basis. Yeah, it must be updated and reviewed on a regular basis because it is supporting an evolving business, a business that is growing and is changing constantly. So this document must be reviewed and updated constantly as things change. One of the key things you understand, we shall see later on, is the external environment. One of the things of the external environment that affects your business is, for example, regulation and legislation. So, for example, if a new law suddenly appears that is going to affect your ICT strategic plan, that document must automatically change. Do we have any questions so far?
No.
Okay, let's move on. Giles has a question or comment.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Doctor. My concern is, you know, in the reality, what happens in most organizations. Yeah, we are challenged with the issue of personnel, the issue of mentorship, for example. So we employ very many people, and you realize that people are not passionate about work. You assign them a responsibility. They basically want to work within, they not want to give it an extra effort in trying to learn new ideas. Now, the issue is how do you push forward your strategy to enable your strategy to be implemented in an organization? Especially now, for example, if you're implementing a new ICT strategy and it's not a new organization, it's an organization that is already used to the old ways. So how, in this case, how do you try to push forward or implement your ICT strategy? Which people do you use? What line do you use? Is it from top management to lower or from lower to top management?
Now, thank you. Now, top management, remember, begins by defining the overall strategic objective. Yeah. And then they come to now the ICT department, which now the overall strategic objective is developed together with the entire organization. So every member of every single department is aware and has participated in the development of the overall strategic objective. That's one. Now, when the different departments are going to develop, remember, the ICT strategic plan is not developed by one person. It's developed by the entire ICT department. The overall organizational strategic plan is developed in collaboration with the entire organization. So every member of every person knows what the organization is going through, why they are going through it. Then you come to the different departments. The different departments then begin to develop their individual department or section strategic plans in relation to the overall organizational plan. So those people who may be at the time they are not driven, they should have been part and parcel. Why are they not driven? Were they not part and parcel of the strategic plan development, especially the ICT one? If it's ICT department, were they not part and parcel? Once you begin to speak, one of the things I've learned, when you sit down and talk and discuss and you say, this is what we are going through. This is what we're going through. At that point, the heart, this is now not the brain, the heart must make a decision where a person says, I'm either part of this team or I'm not. So as you're developing the strategic plan, you're developing it together. It's not the head ICT that is developing it. It's the entire ICT department. And as they're developing it together, they're also making a decision because you're deciding what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what do we need to change. Remember, in the overall strategic plan, there was coming to a consensus. So now when you formulated it, it's all of you that have developed it. So the person is either making a decision to either I want to help make this help the department achieve this, or I don't. So you're not selling it to them because every individual has been part and parcel of that. I don't know if I've answered your question, Giles.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. It's about owning the entire process.
Exactly.
Because you say everybody's supposed to be involved
exactly.
in the process of planning.
Yes.
And therefore, every member must own it. And if you own it, you're able to implement it.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes,
just an experience, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, an experience I had when we had one of the workshops with Reno. I was seated with a head ICT of one of the universities, and this guy goes ahead to tell me that how he had developed a policy, but nobody knew. And that in itself, by the fact nobody knew, he developed it alone and then didn't tell anyone. So what was its purpose? Yeah, who then implements it? Because it's not you alone who's going to implement. So let's look at the benefits. Why ICT strategic planning? The most important is we're trying to align ICT to the business goals. That's the most important thing. Why is it that ICT is so rarely prioritized? Because nobody, especially top management, doesn't see where ICT adds value. But when we have our strategic plan, we're actually seeing where the value is being added, where ICT is actually is adding value. 2, it enables integration of ICT at all levels. Why? Because now we are saying, how do we help finance achieve the organization's strategic objectives? How do we help sales and marketing achieve? So we are integrating it across the board. We are building a strong relationship between the business and the ICT department. Usually ICT is separate, put somewhere in a corner, and you're simply called when somebody has a problem with their workstation. Yeah. The 4th benefit, we now see the significance of the Chief Information Officer or Chief Technology Officer, because this person, this individual who you're training to be right now, is now building the bridge between the ICT department and top management. So who is this CIO or Chief Information Officer? So it's a strategic level position. It's a strategic level position. This person builds the bridge between top management and the ICT department, between the business goals and the implemented ICT solutions. Yeah, that bridge builder. So here we say Izam who writes the ICT strategy, but really is the one who leads, because the entire ICT department writes it. So this person leads. And this ICT strategy contributes to the overall business strategy. Okay, I gave you the example of what we did with our local tea factory here. This is exactly what we did. Although in their case, they actually have one individual who is ICT. So the ICT department is actually one individual. Now, this person also coordinates between the technical team, the users, and management. Now, if all of you are ICT professionals, I don't know if you've experienced it. I remember one time, one user, what we ICT people call users, one user said that, I really don't like these ICT people. You have a problem with your workstation or your laptop, you call the person comes, touches something here and there, then gives you back the laptop. Doesn't tell you what is wrong, just hands it back to you. So that is typical of the technical team. That is the technical team. But now we are trying to move ICT beyond that. Beyond the guy who just comes and touches something, then walks away. So that's the role of the CTO or the CIO. Yeah. So the rest you can read through. They're quite self-explanatory. But do we have any questions so far on the CIO or the CTO? Do we have any question about this role or comment? No? Yes, Giles, you have a comment or question?
Oh, yes, maybe a comment.
Yes, please.
Yeah, what we're trying to say is that the CTO or the Chief Technology Officer should be able to maybe orient the entire team.
Yes.
In issues to do with the ICT.
Yes.
If there are any challenge regarding the use of ICT or implementation, then this person here should be able to provide guidance.
Yes.
And specifically, if we look at the example you gave, where the ICT person just comes and does something and then returns the laptop to you, or something begins to perform, in this case, you're suggesting that the CTO should devise methods of ensuring that these people also get to know how a solution has been found to any challenge of ICT, so that everybody gets to know how solutions can be found. In case there's no one very close who's very good at ICT, then this person should be able to at least do the basics of trying to troubleshoot and find a solution to any ICT problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Giles. Give me a minute, and give me a minute, please. Sorry, briefly, I had to talk to someone. Thank you, Giles, for that contribution. Let's look at the classic approach to ICT strategy development. So we have a number of steps that we go through developing the ICT strategy, but the steps are quite similar to what we saw in the generic ICT strategy development. First things first is to identify the business's capabilities over the next 3 to 5 years. Then also look at the vision, the overall organization's vision. Now, sometimes also the department can also develop its own vision and mission in relation to the overall organization's vision and mission statements. 2, you assess the gaps between the organization's current maturity, ICT maturity, against the vision that has been stated. The gap. Identify how technology can address these gaps. So you have the overall organizational strategy, its vision, where it wants to go, where it is right now. How can ICT help it mature to where it wants to go? How can ICT come in to address the current gaps that have been identified? So you see the importance of everyone being involved in the overall organizational strategy development, because at this point you're already identifying where the gaps are, and then how can ICT help address these gaps? Yeah, how can ICT help address these gaps? Then once those ICT are identified, you design the target technology architecture, because obviously you don't have this technology right now, or it may be there and it's not in use, but you design the target technology architecture that will help address those gaps. Then you assess the organization's current technology gap and the target one which you have designed. So you're picking out the gaps in ICT, the gaps in ICT that need to be addressed. Then you prioritize them. You prioritize those gaps. And say, according to the target technology we need, we say we shall need probably the infrastructure, the backbone infrastructure. We need to target A, B, C, D. In terms of systems, this is the system that we'll need. This is the priority areas. This is the first system we need. Maybe in finance, we need a better system, but also the backbone infrastructure is not extended there. We need to extend it there. in sales and marketing, we need ABCD, but it's not as important as the finance one. The finance is most important. With our clients, we need to get in touch with them with this system. Is it there yet? Can we put it there? What is the need in the backbone infrastructure? So in that sense, you're building an infrastructure that is directly supporting the organizational goals. So far, do we have a question before we move to the next slide? Any question or comment? No? Let me move to the next. So what needs to be described in the information architecture that we're talking about, in the technology architecture that we're talking about? Yeah? What is it that we focus on? We look at application strategy. What applications do we need to fill the gap? What applications are needed? The integration strategy, infrastructure strategy, service, and sourcing. Let's look at this one by one. So application, here we look at the IT applications the organization needs. What does finance need? What does sales and marketing need? Our stakeholders, the clients, what do we need? Our suppliers, what applications do we need? Then we look at integration. With these applications, which application needs to integrate with which application? Yeah, which applications need to support the business processes? For example, in marketing, does the application need to integrate with finance? Does marketing need to integrate with the client side? Then do we need to have an application that with the supplier side? Is there a need for integration? Then those that we have available to us, at what level of application? Is it that we just need a report transferred, or there's actually a business process that needs to feed from marketing to finance directly, or from the client to marketing, or the client to finance? Yeah. Infrastructure strategy. Remember, we said earlier that if we said we need an application or a system in finance, does the backbone stretch up to finance? Or is the marketing department connected? Yeah. As we discuss this, I want you to, when you're looking at the case study that I've given you, please also remember these things that we are talking about. The case study will highlight many of these things that we're talking about. Service strategy. How the organization's customers will get services and at which level. So your customers can be the users or the actual organization's customers. So either one of them, all of these are your customers. The users, those in finance, those in marketing, in operations. Then you have the customers who are the organization's clients. Then also your suppliers are also part of your customers. Then we look at sourcing. Which things are we going to build in-house, and which things are we going to get from the external environment? We need to decide what is outsourced and what we get from in-house. Are we going to host some of our services ourselves, or are we going to host them externally? Depending on our resources and what is available in the market. This is the strategic plan process. It's very, very similar to the overall strategic development process. But remember, as we stated earlier, the ICT strategic plan is fed by the overall business plan. So our first input is the business strategic plan. which gives us an understanding of what the business is. And then also points out the gaps, because the gaps are where ICT makes aligns. Remember the earlier questions I gave you where we said, what are the gaps? How can ICT come in to fill those gaps? We design the target technology architecture, and then we look at our current technology architecture, and then develop our strategic objectives based on that. Implementation. So the implementation is using remember the pillars we looked at: the infrastructure, the application, the processes, or the services. We define the strategic initiatives. Okay, so these would have been defined by our strategic objectives and the activities. Then we budget for them. We budget for them, and we know that these particular ones, now each strategic objective and activity would have been given a time frame. To know, for example, if we're building, if one of them is infrastructure, when do we plan to do this? Then when it comes to budget, how much will it cost, and where will the source of funding come from? Then we come to the next thing. If it's an application, how quickly is this needed? Does it go hand in hand with the backbone infrastructure? And so on and so forth. Any questions so far on this slide? On the IT or ICT strategic plan process? Any questions so far?
Doctor, on
Yes,
number
please.
2, where we talk about identify the evolution scenarios. Just a little more explanation there.
Okay. Now, this one, remember, is involved with aligning to the business strategy. So remember, we had discussed this a bit earlier in the earlier strategies, in the earlier slides, sorry. You start, let me see if I can get the whiteboard here. Okay. We start with the business strategic plan. So this, let me see if I can get, let me see if I, sorry. Let me start with, sorry, business strategic plan. Put S plan. Let me see if I can, I want to get the pencil. This is always a challenge for me to get, try and get back. Let me see, how do I get this back? Okay, let me use this. This is the pencil, sorry, I've got it. So from the business plan, it feeds into the ICT strategic plan. S plan. So now if we go back to our pencil, how does this feed into it? How does this feed into it? Or rather, oh, sorry, let me get this back. ICTS plan. So how does this particular one how do we feed into this one? How do we feed into it? Well, one, we look at the gaps. Yeah, the gaps identified by the business strategic plan, the gaps that have been identified. Two, let me move this further, create another one. After we identify those gaps, we say, how can ICT, how does ICT close the gaps? How does ICT close these gaps? So take an example. This is a vanishing one. I don't want it, but how does ICT close those gaps? We get the idea. Take an example. If an organization says we need to manage our clients more efficiently, yeah, one of its gaps is that one of the gaps is, let's put it here, efficient management of clients. So clients could be anything according to your business. It could be students. It could be like the factory where I am, the clients are the farmers. So ICT comes in. So this is one of the gaps that has been identified. So ICT says, how do we help in this scenario? And ICT says, we can set up, or rather this can be done using a client management system. Yeah, client management system. So the client management system is an actual strategic implementation of a client management system, is an actual strategic objective that ICT can carry out. So what is ICT doing here? They are aligning themselves to the overall business objective. Yeah, and as they're doing this, what is ICT doing? They are actually constructing a target technology architecture. Yeah, this is what ICT is doing at this point. It is designing. By doing this, by identifying this one, then they come back. Maybe there's another strategic objective, which is cutting operational costs. Cutting operational costs in input. So maybe ICT says, let us, instead of, let's say, printing paper, let us set up viewpoints in every area, so that instead of management or maybe finance printing out a hard copy report, let us set up that you have a network that finance can easily send a soft copy. Management, they all view it maybe on screen or on their different workstations. So here ICT, what is ICT maybe sets up seamless network communication between management. Yeah, so this already becomes another thing added to build this technology architecture that ICT has focused on. Now, you see, by doing this, ICT is again going back to simply aligning itself to the overall strategic business plan. I don't know if I've answered your question, Julian.
Yes, doctor, you have.
Okay.
In a way, like identifying the different scenarios.
Yes.
From the business perspective, and then see how those can be changed or impacted using technology.
Yes,
so
that's
the
exactly it.
strategy needs to be aligned to some of the different scenarios.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now let's move on. ICT strategy implementation. So this one is basically, we're now saying we want to translate this strategy into achievable strategic objectives. Yeah. Achievable strategic objectives. So each strategic objective must come together with activities. It must come with activities to say that for me to achieve this objective, I must have activity A, B, C, D that I must do. So we know that strategic objectives can fail if they are not implemented properly. If it's not implemented properly, we must have, first of all, a reward structure to show that for anything that if once a certain dimension has been achieved, we must have a reward structure. We must have resource allocation. So basically, all the things we talked about earlier come into play. Implementation of a strategy may sometimes pose a threat to some managers and employees. So change management is key. We shall talk about, it's one of the sessions we shall talk about, one of the last sessions we shall talk about. You must have an implementation team that engages with all stakeholders to gain their support. So same thing that things were talked about earlier. These are the main steps we go through. We develop an organizational team that is going to help us implement. Remember, you're implementing systems across the board. So you need everyone's support that they actually use the systems that you input there, that they know these are meant to help them achieve their department and then eventually organizational goals. Disperse resources for all the activities. If the communication is going to be done, disperse resources, disperse a team, know what it is you're going to discuss, who you're going to talk to. Create encouraging policies, for example, reward structures, showing them that this is going to help me achieve A, B, C, D. Employing best practices and programs for constant improvement. Link a reward structure. Make use of leadership strategies, strategic leadership. That is, you maybe appoint the head of a particular department to see, or a particular person to see that these new strategic changes are implemented within each department. These are factors that may influence an ICT strategy. One, the business goals. Again, it must be in alignment. If it's not in alignment, then it's going to influence it negatively. Finances, that you have money available to support your activity. The size, type, and structure of the organization. The bigger it is, it can be quite difficult to find people who have other things that they're going through. They may not have things at heart. So here you might want to see that you split things into sections, that you deal with individuals at whatever level. Legacy systems. You may have systems that people have at heart. They don't want to see a change. What people are used to is what they are used to. So if you're changing, bringing in a new system, you really need to have your change management at heart. We also see things like where you have your different customers. When I say customers, this could be your users. People are situated at different geographical locations, and you may not have communicated effectively. Technology change. As we know, ICT changes quickly over time. So you need to keep these things in mind. Your competitors, compliance with external organizations, and compliance with legislation. So legislation is extremely important. With external organizations, let's say if your system has to be compatible with a supplier or what your users are using, maybe if you have clients who are external, so ensuring that your systems are compliant across the board. Then legislation, of course, what is in the law, things like the Data Protection and Privacy Acts, Computer Use Act, and all of that. All of this, you must be compliant. So I've already gone through all of these in that brief discussion, so I won't go through the detailed part. Yeah, I won't go through these, but you can go through them in your own time. So we have large organizations. We have some organizations which are quite large. For example, think of something like the UN. The UN is a really large corporate organization. So imagine it's ICT strategy. You have the UN that is working in South Sudan. You have the UN that is in Congo. You have the UN that is in Uganda, and there must be a trickle-down effect. What the corporate overall strategy says must be fulfilled at the lower levels. Yeah, this must be fulfilled at the lower levels. These are some of the things that you must think about when it's a corporate level, the technology life cycle. What is, sorry, Ivan, do you have a comment? No, let's move on. So we have to think about technology life cycle. Your strategy must state what is the minimum life cycle that is expected, or rather even in the policy. Future proofing, handling anything that comes up in the future for the corporation. If it's a corporation that is global, what is going to happen in case anything breaks out, if anything new happens, or even in the technology field, procurement, how is technology procured? Do you have a centralized place that you're procuring this equipment? If so, if not the case, let's say if it's the UN, in South Sudan, they may be buying the equipment from Uganda or from Kenya. And then it should be the same across the board. People considerations, because if it's a corporation, you don't want the little person to disappear. You want the individual's rights and considerations are put into place. Information management, how it is managed, you consider what is private, what is public, what is protected, and so on and so forth, so that it's the same across the board. So these slides are simply going through what I've been discussing. You can go through them again in your own time. But what is key is standards. So a standard is a common way of doing things. As the ICT department, especially if it is a corporation, you should have a standard to say, this is the standard, let's say, for our cabling. This is our standard for firewalls. This is our standard. Whatever the corporation is, it's the standard and it must be adhered to. Yeah. So these are some of the things that you can think about. It can even go further to equipment, what type of equipment, and also even configurations. A good place to start would be NITAU. NITAU has standards which everyone can look at and then consider for your own different scenarios. Yeah. So I would say look at this article, Determinants of Electronic Health in Developing Countries. Look at that article and it can start your discussion on standards, especially in healthcare. With that, I think we've come to the end. Do we have any question? So far, we have taken up a lot of your Saturday, and I may have bombarded you with a lot of information. Do we have any questions so far?
No, at my side.
Okay. Okay. I think then we have come to the end of today's sessions. I would urge you to look at the assignment that is up on Moodle. It's a group assignment. It would be a good idea if you can send me your groups now that I input them in Moodle. And it's based on a case study which is already up on Moodle called the Clarion School for Boys. Please look at that. And yeah, we can have a discussion. You can call me in case something doesn't make sense, but please look at it. It involves you reading through the case study, providing a critical analysis. That means giving us a SWOT of the situation analysis for that organization, and then setting up a strategic plan. That basically strategic objectives. What I'm asking for is strategic objectives and activities that you would formulate for that particular case. I don't know if anyone had looked at it. Yes, Julian.
Doctor, this is probably may not be for you, but I'm just requesting for the team leader, because I don't think I have a group that I belong to. So I don't know who to talk to put me in one of the groups.
Okay. I think Justin can help with that. Justin, can you help Julian? Because Julian is not in any of the classes.
Thank you, Doctor. Justin, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other question or comment?
Yes, Doctor. Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
It's also a request from me. I'm not in any group because I don't belong to this class.
Okay.
So I don't know if I could also be added to any group if possible. I will be grateful. Thank you.
So Justin, I think you've noted it's Lydian and Julian that need your help here.
Okay, Doctor, I'm going to share my number in the chat.
Okay, okay. Okay, shall we close off our day today and wish you a good weekend?
A good weekend too, Doctor.
Okay.